The rain hammered against the tall windows of Seattle Public Library as 17-year-old Maya Chen hunched over her laptop in the corner of the third floor. It was past 8 in the evening, and most people had already gone home. But Maya wasn't in a hurry to leave. She never was. The group home where she lived wasn't exactly a place she wanted to rush back to. 6 other teenagers crammed into a house meant for 4, shared bedrooms and a TV that only worked when someone smacked it just right. The library was different. Here nobody asked her why she was so quiet. Nobody made fun of her for spending Friday nights reading about mathematical patterns in Beethoven's symphonies instead of going to parties. Maya had been on her own since she was 12. That was when the car accident happened. One moment she had parents who loved her, a little brother who annoyed her, and a house that always smelled like her mom's cooking. The next moment she had nothing. Just a social worker with kind eyes and a foster system that shuffled her around like a deck of cards. 5 years had passed since then. 5 years of temporary families, temporary rooms, temporary everything. The only constant in her life was the library and her beat-up laptop that she'd bought with money saved from washing dishes at a coffee shop downtown. Tonight, like most nights, Maya was doing what she loved most. She was looking for patterns that nobody else could see. Her obsession with music and mathematics had started before the accident. Her dad had been a piano teacher, and her mom worked as a software engineer. Maya had inherited both their talents. She could hear a melody once and play it perfectly. She could solve equations that made her classmates' heads spin. But after they died, these skills became more than just talents. They became her escape. In the music archives section, Maya had access to thousands of digitized musical scores. Old compositions, rare manuscripts, pieces that most people had never heard of. She would spend hours analyzing them, looking for hidden mathematical sequences, patterns in the notes, anything that made her brain light up with excitement. 3 weeks ago, the library had received a massive donation from the estate of Richard Ashford. Maya had read about him in the news. Tech billionaire, genius programmer, classical music lover. He died suddenly at 62, and apparently he had no family. No wife, no kids, nobody. Just billions of dollars and a will that had lawyers fighting like dogs over a bone. The donation included hundreds of rare musical manuscripts that Ashford had collected over his lifetime. Maya had been working through them systematically, one by one, like she always did. Most were exactly what they appeared to be. Beautiful old music, nothing more. But tonight was different. Maya's fingers froze over her keyboard as she stared at the screen. She'd been examining a manuscript of an obscure piece from the 1800s, something by a composer she'd never heard of. At first glance, it looked normal. But then she noticed the tiny marks in the margins, numbers, symbols, little notations that didn't match the musical style of the period. Her heart started beating faster. She zoomed in on the image, her nose almost touching the screen. The handwriting in the margins was modern, definitely not from the 1800s. Someone had added these notes recently, and based on the metadata of the digitized file, that someone was probably Richard Ashford himself. Maya grabbed her notebook and started writing down the numbers. At first they seemed random, but as she continued through the pages of the musical score, a pattern began to emerge. Certain notes corresponded to certain numbers. The rests between notes seemed to indicate mathematical operations. Addition, subtraction, multiplication. She'd seen something like this before in her cryptography class at school. It was a simple substitution cipher, but instead of letters, it used musical notation. Her hands were shaking now. This couldn't be real, could it? Maya spent the next 2 hours frantically scribbling in her notebook, cross-referencing the musical notes with numerical values, trying different combinations. The library announced its closing in 30 minutes, but she barely heard it. She was so close to something. She could feel it, finally, at 9:45, with the security guard giving her pointed looks from across the room. The pattern clicked into place, the sequence of numbers, when decoded, gave her a set of coordinates, latitude and longitude. She quickly typed them into Google Maps on her phone, a storage facility in Portland, Oregon, about 3 hours away by bus. Maya sat back in her chair, her mind racing. This was crazy. Absolutely crazy. A dead billionaire had hidden some kind of code in a musical manuscript, and she'd just accidentally found it. But why? What did it mean? And more importantly, what was she supposed to do about it? She thought about the news reports she'd seen about Ashford's will. The whole thing was bizarre. He'd left instructions that his fortune would go to the one who truly understands his life's work. Lawyers and business partners had been arguing for months about what that meant. Some claimed it meant his business partner should inherit. Others said it should go to charity. Nobody could agree, but what if this was it? What if the code in the music was the key to understanding what Ashford wanted? Maya carefully photographed every page of the manuscript with her phone. She saved all her notes. Then she packed up her laptop and headed out into the rain. On the bus ride back to the group home, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She'd grown up hearing her dad talk about how music was just another form of mathematics, how composers like Bach had built entire pieces around mathematical ratios and patterns. Ashford must have understood this too. He must have been like her, someone who saw the connection between numbers and notes, between logic and beauty. When she got back to her room, her roommate was already asleep. Maya climbed into her small bed and pulled out her phone, staring at the coordinates again. Portland wasn't that far. She had almost $300 saved up from her job. A bus ticket would only cost about $40 round trip. But what if she was wrong? What if this was just her imagination running wild, seeing patterns that weren't really there? She'd be wasting money she needed for college applications, for books, for everything. Then again, what if she was right? Maya thought about Richard Ashford, dying alone with billions of dollars and nobody to leave them to. She thought about herself, alone in a group home with nothing but her laptop and her dreams of maybe, someday, going to a good college and making something of herself. She thought about the code in the music, deliberately hidden, waiting for someone who would understand it, someone like her. The decision was made before she even realized it. Tomorrow was Saturday. She didn't have to work. She could take the early bus to Portland, check out the storage facility, and be back by evening. Nobody would even notice she was gone. Maya set her alarm for 5 in the morning and tried to sleep. But her mind kept spinning, kept calculating, kept wondering what she would find in Portland. She had no idea that this decision would change her life forever. She had no idea that powerful people were already looking for the same code she'd just cracked. She had no idea that by tomorrow night, her face would start appearing on security cameras that very dangerous people were watching. All she knew was that she'd found something extraordinary, and for the first time since the accident, she felt like her life might actually mean something. The rain continued to fall outside her window as Maya finally drifted off to sleep. Her phone clutched in her hand, the coordinates glowing softly in the darkness. Maya's alarm went off at 5 in the morning, and for a second she thought about ignoring it. Her bed was warm, and the idea of taking a 3-hour bus ride to chase what might be nothing seemed completely insane in the cold light of dawn. But then she remembered the code, the patterns in the music, the coordinates. She got dressed quietly, grabbed her backpack, and slipped out of the house before anyone woke up. The bus station was a 20-minute walk, and the streets were still dark and empty. Maya bought a round-trip ticket to Portland with cash, her hands sweating despite the cold morning air. The bus was half empty. She found a window seat in the back and pulled out her notebook, going over the decoded numbers again and again. Part of her still couldn't believe this was real, a hidden code in a dead billionaire's music collection. It sounded like something from a movie, not real life, but the numbers didn't lie. And Maya had always trusted numbers more than people anyway. 3 hours later, the bus pulled into Portland. Maya had the address of the storage facility written on a piece of paper in her pocket. She took a city bus to get there, watching the neighborhoods change from downtown to industrial areas with warehouses and storage units. The facility was called Secure Space Storage. It was a big building with orange doors and security cameras everywhere. Maya's stomach did a flip as she walked through the entrance. A bored-looking guy sat behind the front desk, scrolling through his phone. "Can I help you?" he asked without looking up. Maya's mouth went dry. She hadn't really thought this part through. Yeah. I need to access Unit 247. Now he looked up. "You got the access code?" This was it, the moment of truth. Maya pulled out her phone and read off the number sequence she'd decoded from the musical manuscript. Her voice shook a little as she said the digits. The guy typed something into his computer, then his eyebrows went up. "Huh. Okay, down that hallway, 3rd floor left side. Elevator's broken, so you'll have to take the stairs." Maya couldn't believe it had actually worked. She tried to act casual as she walked down the hallway, but inside her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might explode. The stairs seemed to go on forever. By the time she reached the third floor, she was out of breath and her hands were shaking. She found Unit 247 at the end of a long corridor lined with identical orange doors. There was a keypad next to the door. Maya entered the code again. The lock clicked open. She stood there for a moment staring at the handle. This was it. Whatever was inside this storage unit, someone had gone through a lot of trouble to hide it. And that someone was Richard Ashford, a man who had died with $12 billion and no one to leave it to. Maya pulled the door open. The unit was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. It was mostly empty except for a metal filing cabinet in the corner and a single cardboard box sitting on top of it. She walked over and opened the box with trembling hands. Inside was a sealed envelope. Thick cream-colored paper, expensive looking. On the front, in elegant handwriting, it said, "To the one who listens." Maya carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, several pages long, handwritten in the same careful script. She sat down on the cold concrete floor and began to read. The letter started with a simple sentence. "If you're reading this, you understand music the way I do." Maya's eyes filled with tears, though she couldn't explain why. Richard Ashford's letter was unlike anything she'd expected. He didn't write like a businessman or a billionaire. He wrote like someone who'd been incredibly lonely for a very long time. He explained that he'd grown up in foster care, just like Maya, bounced around from home to home, never really belonging anywhere. Music had been his only constant, the only thing that made sense when nothing else did. He taught himself piano in middle school, learned to code in high school, and eventually discovered that the patterns in music and the patterns in programming were essentially the same thing. That discovery had made him rich. He'd built an algorithm based on harmonic progressions, something to do with how musical chords resolve and create tension. Maya didn't understand all the technical details, but she got the basic idea. He'd seen a pattern that nobody else had noticed, and he'd turned it into a billion-dollar company. But success hadn't made him happy. The letter talked about how he'd never found anyone who really understood him. He'd had business partners who wanted his money, employees who feared him, and competitors who tried to steal from him. But nobody who actually got what it was like to see the world as one giant mathematical pattern set to music. So he'd created a test. A puzzle hidden in the thing he loved most. Music. Over 20 years, he'd bought rare manuscripts and sheet music. He'd studied cryptography and coding systems. And slowly, carefully, he'd embedded a trail of clues that would only make sense to someone who thought like him, someone who saw music as mathematics and mathematics as music. The letter went on to explain that this storage unit was just the first step. There were more locations, more clues. Each one would reveal a piece of what he called his true legacy. But then the tone of the letter changed. Ashford wrote about his former business partner, a man named Vincent Carver. They'd started the company together, but it had ended badly. Ashford claimed that Carver had stolen his original algorithm and tried to patent it under his own name. There had been a huge legal battle, millions spent on lawyers, and eventually Ashford had won. But the fight had destroyed their friendship and left Ashford paranoid and isolated. The worst part? Carver knew about the code, not the details, not how to solve it, but he knew it existed. Ashford had mentioned it once during an argument years ago before they'd stopped speaking. He'd said something about hiding his real fortune where Carver would never find it, somewhere that required both genius and soul to discover. It was a stupid thing to say in anger, Ashford admitted in the letter. But he'd said it, and Carver had never forgotten. The letter warned Maya to be careful, to move quickly but quietly. Carver had resources, investigators, money. If he found out someone was solving the code, he'd do everything possible to stop them or steal the solution. Maya's hands were shaking as she finished reading. This was so much bigger than she'd imagined. This wasn't just about finding some hidden treasure or inheriting money. This was about a lonely genius who'd spent 20 years creating a test to find someone like him. Someone who'd been through the same kind of pain, the same isolation, but had somehow kept their love of patterns and beauty alive, and now she was being warned that dangerous people might come after her for solving it. At the bottom of the letter was another sequence of numbers and musical notation. Maya recognized it immediately as the next clue. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures of everything. The letter, the numbers, the box, the filing cabinet. Evidence that she'd actually been here, that this was real. Inside the filing cabinet, she found more documents, bank account numbers, legal papers, references to locations in Vancouver, San Francisco, and New York. It was like a treasure map, except instead of gold, the treasure was understanding, connection, proof that someone else in the world thought like you did. Maya spent almost an hour in that storage unit, reading and photographing everything. By the time she closed the door and headed back downstairs, her backpack was full of photocopies and her phone was full of images. The guy at the front desk barely looked at her as she left. She caught the bus back to Seattle in a daze, her mind spinning with everything she'd learned. She had so many questions. Who was Vincent Carver? How much did he know? And what exactly was Ashford's true legacy that he kept mentioning in the letter? The bus rolled through the gray afternoon, and Maya stared out the window without really seeing anything. She thought about Ashford, alone in some mansion somewhere, spending years creating this elaborate puzzle because he couldn't find a single person who understood him. She thought about herself, alone in a group home, spending every night in the library, because it was the only place she felt like she belonged. Maybe that's what the code was really about, not money or inheritance or revenge against a former partner. Maybe it was just a message from one lonely person to another. You're not alone. Someone else sees the patterns too. Someone else understands. By the time Maya got back to Seattle, it was almost dinner time. She snuck back into the group home and pretended she'd been in her room all day. Nobody had even noticed she was gone. That night, lying in her bed with her roommate snoring across the room, Maya decoded the next sequence from the letter. It pointed to a bank in Vancouver, Canada. She had no passport. She had no way to cross the border. But she had the code, and she had the fire in her chest that came from knowing she was onto something real. She'd figure out the rest tomorrow. What Maya didn't know was that earlier that day, the security cameras at the storage facility had recorded her arrival and departure, and what she definitely didn't know was that Vincent Carver's people checked those cameras every single week, waiting for exactly this moment. Maya woke up on Monday morning with a strange feeling in her gut. Something was off, but she couldn't put her finger on what. She went through her normal routine, school, coffee shop, job, library, but everywhere she went, she felt like someone was watching her. On the bus to school, a man in a black jacket seemed to be staring at her. At lunch, a woman in a gray suit sat 3 tables away, never touching her food, just looking at her phone and occasionally glancing in Maya's direction. Maya told herself she was being paranoid. The trip to Portland had spooked her, that's all. She was seeing danger where there wasn't any, but then things got weird. On Tuesday afternoon, her foster mom pulled her aside with a concerned look. Maya, honey, someone called the house yesterday asking about you. Maya's blood went cold. Who? I don't know. They said they were from a scholarship foundation, wanted to know about your academic interests, what schools you were applying to, but something felt strange about it. They asked a lot of questions about your hobbies, where you spend your time after school. What did you tell them? Her foster mom shrugged. Not much. I said you were a good kid who liked the library. But Maya, if you're in some kind of trouble, I'm not, Maya said quickly. It's probably just a spam call or something. But she knew it wasn't. That night, Maya couldn't focus on anything. She sat in her usual corner at the library, but instead of working on the next clue, she kept looking over her shoulder. Every person who walked by made her jump. She was about to pack up and leave when Mr. Harrison appeared. He was the head librarian, an older man with white hair and kind eyes who'd been working there for 30 years. Maya had known him since she first started coming to the library 5 years ago. He was the closest thing she had to a mentor, always recommending books and helping her find obscure musical scores. You look troubled, he said, sitting down across from her. Maya hesitated. She hadn't told anyone about the code, about Portland, about any of it. But Mr. Harrison had always been good to her, and right now she really needed someone to talk to. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Hypothetically? Mr. Harrison smiled. Hypothetically, of course. If someone found something valuable, something that technically belonged to them but other people might want to steal, what should they do? Mr. Harrison was quiet for a moment. That's quite a hypothetical. Is this something physically valuable or intellectually valuable? Both, maybe. He leaned back in his chair. Maya, I've known you for 5 years. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met, and I taught music theory at the university for 20 years before I came here. If you've stumbled onto something important, you need to be very careful about who you trust." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I think I might be in over my head." "Tell me," he said simply. So she did. She told him everything. The code in the musical manuscripts, the trip to Portland, the letter from Richard Ashford, the warning about Vincent Carver. All of it came pouring out in a whisper-quiet rush of words. Mr. Harrison listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat there for a long moment, his face serious. "Maya, this is extraordinary," he said finally. "Do you understand what you found? This isn't just about money. Richard Ashford created a test that requires understanding music theory, cryptography, and mathematics. Most people couldn't solve this if they had 100 years. But people are watching me now. I think someone followed me today." Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "If Carver knows someone is solving the code, he'll have people looking for them. But here's what you need to understand. You have something he doesn't. You have the solution. He's just guessing, following leads. You're ahead of him. So what do I do?" "We solve the rest of it," Mr. Harrison said. "Together. Fast, before he figures out who you are." Over the next 3 days, Maya and Mr. Harrison worked in secret. They came to the library early before it opened, and stayed late after it closed. Mr. Harrison had keys to everything, access to archives that weren't available to regular visitors. The next clue led them to bank information, but not the kind Maya expected. It wasn't about money. It was about documents that Ashford had stored in a safety deposit box in Vancouver. Legal papers, apparently. Something about his original algorithm and the court case with Carver. "He's building a case for you," Mr. Harrison said as they decoded the musical notation. "He's showing you his life story piece by piece. The algorithm that made him rich, the betrayal by his partner, the evidence he collected. He wants you to understand everything before you claim the inheritance." "But I can't get to Vancouver," Maya said. "I don't have a passport." "Actually," Mr. Harrison said carefully, "I think I can help with that. My daughter lives in Vancouver. She's a lawyer. If you're willing to trust me, I can arrange for you to meet with her. She can access the safety deposit box on your behalf if you give her the documentation." Maya looked at him. "Why are you helping me?" Mr. Harrison smiled sadly. "Because 30 years ago I had a student who was a lot like you. Brilliant, orphaned, alone. I didn't help him enough. Didn't realize how much he was struggling. He dropped out of school and I never saw him again. I've always regretted that. So when I see a kid like you, with so much potential, facing something this big alone, I'm not going to make the same mistake twice." They sent encrypted emails to Mr. Harrison's daughter, explaining the situation. She agreed to help, though she warned them that if Carver was really watching, they needed to be extremely careful. Meanwhile, things at school got worse. On Thursday, Maya came back to the group home to find her room had been searched. Nothing was missing, but everything was slightly out of place. Her foster mom said a maintenance person had come to check for a gas leak. But Maya knew better. She'd been keeping all her notes and photos on a cloud drive with heavy encryption, something Mr. Harrison had helped her set up. But still, the message was clear. Someone was looking for her, and they were getting closer. On Friday morning, Maya walked into school and saw her face on the television in the cafeteria. Her stomach dropped. It was a local news channel. The headline read, "Orphaned Teen Claims She Solved Billionaire's Code." Maya stood frozen as the reporter explained how an anonymous source had revealed that a Seattle high school student believed she'd decoded a puzzle left by Richard Ashford. The story didn't name Maya specifically, but it showed footage of the library, mentioned a 17-year-old foster kid, described someone matching her exact description. By lunch, everyone at school knew it was her. The attention was overwhelming. Kids she'd never spoken to suddenly wanted to be her friend. Teachers looked at her with suspicion, like she was running some kind of scam. The principal called her into his office and asked if there was anything she needed to discuss. Maya said no and kept her head down, but the worst part came after school. She was walking to the bus stop when a black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down and a man in an expensive suit looked out at her. "Maya Chen?" he said. She didn't answer, just kept walking. "My name is David Torres. I work for Vincent Carver. He'd like to speak with you." Maya's heart was racing, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." The man smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. You visited a storage facility in Portland last Saturday, Unit 247. You were there for 1 hour and 17 minutes. You left with documents that don't belong to you. Maya stopped walking. There was no point in lying now. Those documents belong to whoever solved the code, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. That's me. Mr. Carver would like to make you an offer. $5 million cash, tax-free. All you have to do is sign over your rights to whatever you found and walk away. You can go to any college you want, live anywhere you want, never worry about money again. $5 million. Maya had never even imagined that much money. She could leave the foster system forever, get her own apartment, go to MIT or Stanford or anywhere, never wash another dish or share another bedroom or wonder where her next meal was coming from. And if I say no? She asked. The man's smile faded. Then things get complicated. Mr. Carver has lawyers. Very good lawyers. They can tie you up in court for years. They can make your life very difficult. Or, he paused, you could take the money and move on. Smart girl like you, that seems like the obvious choice. Maya thought about Richard Ashford alone in his mansion, spending 20 years creating a puzzle for someone who would understand him. She thought about the letter. To the one who listens. She thought about how the code wasn't really about money at all. It was about finding someone who saw the world the same way you did. Tell Mr. Carver I'm not interested, Maya said. The man's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, Maya said, but it's my mistake to make. She walked away from the car, her whole body shaking, and didn't look back. Behind her, she heard the window roll up and the car drive away. Maya pulled out her phone and texted Mr. Harrison. They found me. We need to move faster. His reply came back immediately. Meet me at the library. Back entrance. We need to talk about New York. Maya slipped through the back entrance of the library just as the sun was setting. Mr. Harrison was waiting for her in his small office, surrounded by stacks of old books and musical scores. He looked more worried than she'd ever seen him. Sit down, he said, closing the door behind her. We need to talk about what happens next. Maya collapsed into the chair across from his desk. The confrontation with Carver's man had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. They offered me $5 million to walk away. Mr. Harrison nodded. I'm not surprised. That's actually less than I expected, which tells me something important. What? They don't know how much this is really worth. They're guessing, trying to scare you into taking a buyout before you understand what you've actually found. He pulled out a folder and opened it on the desk. My daughter accessed the safety deposit box in Vancouver this morning. She scanned everything and sent it to me. Maya leaned forward, her heart racing. What was in it? Documentation. Years of it. Emails, financial records, patent applications. Evidence that Vincent Carver stole Ashford's original algorithm and tried to claim it as his own work. Mr. Harrison's voice was grim. Ashford spent millions in legal fees proving the work was his. He won the case, but barely, and it destroyed him. After that, he couldn't trust anyone in his professional life. So why keep all this evidence locked away? Because it's not just evidence of what Carver did 20 years ago. It's evidence of what he's still doing. Mr. Harrison pulled out several pages. According to these documents, Carver has been using variations of Ashford's algorithm in his current company without proper licensing. He's built a whole empire on stolen work. If this information went public, he'd be ruined. Criminal charges, lawsuits, everything. Maya stared at the papers. That's why he wants the code so badly. He's not after money. He's trying to bury the evidence. Exactly. And that makes him more dangerous than we thought. They sat in silence for a moment. Maya's mind was racing. She'd thought this was just about inheritance, about a lonely billionaire leaving his fortune to someone who understood him. But it was bigger than that. This was about justice, about exposing someone who'd built his success on lies. There's one more location, Mr. Harrison said quietly. New York, a music conservatory. According to the pattern in the code, that's where Ashford hid the final piece. What piece? I don't know. But I think it's the key to everything. The will, the foundation, all of it. He looked at her seriously. Maya, you need to understand something. Once you go to New York, once you find whatever is there, there's no going back. This story is already on the news. If you claim Ashford's inheritance, your life will never be private again. You'll be in charge of billions of dollars. You'll be fighting legal battles. You'll have power, yes, but also responsibility, more than any 17-year-old should have to handle. Maya thought about the group home, her tiny shared bedroom, the constant uncertainty of where she'd be next year, or the year after that. She thought about working at the coffee shop, saving every dollar for college applications, wondering if she'd even be able to afford to go. And then she thought about Ashford's letter. The loneliness in every word, the hope that somewhere someone would understand. "I have to finish it," she said. "Not for the money. Because he asked me to. Because he spent 20 years leaving this message for someone, and I'm the one who found it." Mr. Harrison smiled sadly. "I hoped you'd say that. But I also hoped you wouldn't." He pulled out an envelope. "I bought you a plane ticket to New York. Tomorrow morning, early flight. I told your foster parents you're visiting colleges for the weekend. They won't ask questions. You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. Because you remind me of every student I ever failed to help. And because what you're doing matters." He handed her the envelope along with some cash. "This is for food and a cab. The conservatory is in Manhattan. The address is in the code, but I've written it down for you anyway." Maya took the envelope with shaking hands. "What if I can't figure out the last clue? What if I get there and there's nothing? Then you come home and you tried. But Maya, you've solved every puzzle so far. You'll solve this one too." That night, Maya barely slept. She packed a small backpack with clothes and her laptop. She went over the decoded sequences one more time, making sure she had everything memorized. The address in New York, the name of the conservatory, the specific archive section where Ashford had hidden something. At 4 a.m, she crept out of the group home and took a bus to the airport. The plane ticket Mr. Harrison bought her was for a flight at 6:30. She'd never been on a plane before. Never been out of Washington State, actually. The flight was surreal. Maya pressed her face against the window and watched Seattle disappear beneath the clouds. Somewhere down there, Vincent Carver's people were probably looking for her. Somewhere lawyers were arguing about Ashford's will, and somewhere in New York, the final answer was waiting. She landed at JFK just after 2 p.m. The city was overwhelming. So many people, so much noise, buildings so tall they seemed to touch the sky. Maya had seen New York in movies, but being there was completely different. She took a cab to the conservatory, watching the meter tick up with anxiety. Every dollar spent was a dollar she might need later. But Mr. Harrison had given her enough. Just enough. The Ashford Conservatory of Music was a beautiful old building with stone columns and tall windows. Maya stood outside for a moment, looking up at it. Of course Ashford had donated money to build this place. Of course it was named after him. Music had been everything to him, just like it had been everything to her father. Inside, the lobby was quiet and elegant. A woman at the front desk looked up as Maya approached. "I'm here to access the archives," Maya said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "I have permission." The woman raised an eyebrow. "The archives aren't open to the public, dear." "Are you a student here?" "No, but I'm researching Richard Ashford's collection. The manuscripts he donated." Maya pulled out her phone and showed the woman a photo of one of the documents from Vancouver, something official looking with Ashford's signature. The woman studied it for a moment, then nodded. "3rd floor. Take the elevator. Dr. Patterson is the archivist. He'll help you." Maya's hands were sweating as she rode the elevator up. The 3rd floor was quiet, lined with practice rooms where she could hear people playing piano, violin, various instruments. At the end of the hall was a door marked Archives. Dr. Patterson was a thin man with glasses and gray hair, surrounded by shelves of old sheet music. He looked surprised to see a teenager. "Can I help you? I'm looking for the Ashford collection." "Original manuscripts." His expression changed. "Are you the girl from the news? The one who solved the code?" Maya hesitated, then nodded. Dr. Patterson smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and kind. "I've been waiting for you. Mr. Ashford left specific instructions. If anyone ever came asking about his personal manuscripts using certain keywords, I was to show them a particular item." He led her to a climate-controlled room in the back. On a special shelf, protected behind glass, was a leather-bound book. "This is Ashford's personal composition journal. He wrote these pieces when he was a teenager, before he got into technology. Nobody has ever been allowed to see them." Dr. Patterson unlocked the case and carefully removed the journal. He said that only someone who truly understood his work would ever find their way here. And he wanted that person to have this. Maya opened the journal with trembling hands. The music inside was beautiful. Complex pieces that showed incredible talent. But more than that, they showed someone who felt deeply, who put all his loneliness and hope into these notes. Tucked inside the back cover was a flash drive. He left that too, Dr. Patterson said quietly. Whatever is on it, it's yours now. Maya pocketed the flash drive and turned the pages of the journal slowly. Each piece had a date, a title, and sometimes little notes in the margins. The same handwriting from the letter in Portland. Young, hopeful handwriting that hadn't yet been touched by betrayal and isolation. The final page of the journal had a single sentence written at the bottom. To whoever finds this, don't make my mistakes. Don't let genius make you lonely. Use what I've left you to build connection, not walls. Maya felt tears running down her cheeks. She quickly wiped them away. Are you all right? Tucker Patterson asked gently. Yeah, Maya said. I just understand him. That's all. Dr. Patterson helped her photograph every page of the journal for her records, then let her take the flash drive. As Maya left the conservatory, the sun was setting over Manhattan. The city lights were starting to come on, thousands and thousands of them, stretching as far as she could see. She found a coffee shop with Wi-Fi and plugged the flash drive into her laptop with shaking hands. On it was a video file, just one. Dated from 6 months before Ashford died. Maya put in her headphones and pressed play. Richard Ashford's face appeared on screen. He looked tired but peaceful, sitting in what looked like a study, surrounded by books and musical instruments. Hello, he said to the camera. If you're watching this, you solved my puzzle. You found all the pieces, you understood the music, and that means you're someone very special. Maya's hands covered her mouth as she watched. Ashford explained everything in the video, the foundation he'd created. $8 billion set aside to support orphan children with exceptional abilities, not just throwing money at the problem, but creating homes where kids like them could find community, where being smart and different and weird wasn't a curse but a gift. But I couldn't just give this to any charity, Ashford said on the screen. I needed to know that the person running it would understand these kids, would know what it's like to be alone with your genius, wondering if you'll ever find your people. So I created the code, and you solved it, which means you're exactly the right person for this job. The video explained the legal framework, the board of directors already assembled, the lawyer who would help her navigate everything, all of it waiting ready for the person who solved the puzzle. You're going to have people tell you you're too young for this, Ashford said, that you should hand it over to adults. Don't listen to them. You earned this. You understood. That's all that matters. He smiled slightly. Also about Vincent Carver. I know he's probably giving you trouble. The documents in Vancouver prove everything. You have the power to destroy him if you want to, but that choice is yours. Justice or mercy? I couldn't decide, so I'm leaving it up to you. The video ended with Ashford looking directly at the camera. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being someone who sees the patterns. You're not alone anymore. Neither am I wherever I am now. Good luck. The screen went black. Maya sat in that coffee shop for a long time, staring at her laptop, tears streaming down her face. Maya sat on the plane back to Seattle, staring out the window at the clouds below. The flash drive was in her pocket, along with photos of Ashford's composition journal. In her backpack was documentation that could destroy Vincent Carver's career and possibly land him in prison. The question was, what was she going to do about it? Part of her wanted revenge. Carver had sent people to follow her, to search her room, to offer her money like she was something that could be bought. He'd stolen from Ashford, built an empire on lies, and never faced real consequences. But another part of her remembered what Ashford had written. Don't let genius make you lonely. Use what I've left you to build connection, not walls. Revenge would feel good for a moment, but it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't bring Ashford back. It wouldn't help the kids who were living in group homes right now, wondering if anyone would ever understand them. By the time the plane landed in Seattle, Maya had made her decision. Mr. Harrison picked her up from the airport. He didn't ask any questions, just gave her a hug and drove her back to the library. It was Sunday evening and the building was closed, but he had keys to everything. They went to his office and Maya plugged in the flash drive. Together they watched Ashford's video. When it ended, Mr. Harrison took off his glasses and wiped his eyes. That's remarkable, he said quietly. $8 billion to help kids like you. Kids who think differently, who see patterns, who feel alone. I want you to help me run it, Maya said. Mr. Harrison looked surprised. Maya, I'm just a librarian. You were a professor. You understand music and education. And you're the only adult who believed in me when this whole thing started. She looked at him seriously. Ashford set up a board of directors, but I get to choose the people who actually do the work. I want you to be the education director. Please. Mr. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled. I'd be honored. They spent the next several hours going through all the documentation on the flash drive. There were legal papers, financial statements, instructions for activating the foundation. There were also contact details for Ashford's personal lawyer, a woman named Jennifer Wu who'd been waiting for someone to solve the code. Maya sent her an email that night. By Monday morning, she had a response. Jennifer wanted to meet as soon as possible. The meeting happened on Tuesday afternoon in a downtown Seattle office building. Jennifer Wu was younger than Maya expected, maybe in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. I've been Ashford's lawyer for 15 years, she said, as they sat down in her conference room. He told me about the code 7 years ago. I honestly didn't think anyone would ever solve it. She looked at Maya with something like respect. But here you are. Here I am, Maya agreed. Jennifer laid out the situation. The foundation was ready to launch. The money was already set aside in trust. The board of directors had been carefully selected by Ashford, all people who understood education, child welfare, and supporting exceptional talent. But the foundation needed a director, someone to guide its mission and make the big decisions. Ashford's will specifies that you have that role, Jennifer said. But I have to be honest with you, Maya. You're 17. You're still in high school. The media is already going crazy with this story. People are going to question whether you're capable of handling this. I know, Maya said. So here's what I propose. You finish high school. You accept the position as director, but we set up a structure where you're working with experienced advisors. You make the vision, they help execute it. You're not doing this alone, Maya nodded. That sounded reasonable. And what about Vincent Carver? Jennifer's expression hardened. What about him? I have documents proving he stole Ashford's algorithm, that he's still using it without proper licensing, that he built his whole company on fraud. I know. Ashford showed me those documents years ago. He wanted to destroy Carver, but he was worried it would make him look vindictive. He couldn't decide what to do, so he left that choice to you. Jennifer leaned forward. What do you want to do? Maya thought about the man in the black car. The offer of $5 million. The implied threats. She thought about Ashford, spending millions in legal fees, becoming isolated and paranoid because someone he trusted had betrayed him. I want to make him an offer, Maya said. Jennifer raised an eyebrow. What kind of offer? He's been using Ashford's algorithm for 20 years without proper licensing. He owes royalties. A lot of them. Maya pulled out her notebook where she'd done some calculations. Based on the financial records, I estimate he's made at least $2 billion using the algorithm. If we sued him, we'd probably win, but it would take years and cost millions in legal fees. So what's your offer? He pays $500 million to the foundation. In exchange, we grant him a proper license for the algorithm and agree not to pursue criminal charges. Maya looked at Jennifer. He gets to keep his company and his reputation. We get money to help kids. Nobody has to spend years in court. Jennifer was quiet for a moment, then smiled. That's brilliant. It's justice without revenge. Ashford would have liked that. Can we do it? Absolutely. I'll draw up the papers. He'll probably fight it at first, but once he sees the evidence we have, he'll realize he doesn't have a choice. The next few weeks were a blur. Jennifer reached out to Carver's lawyers with the offer. At first they refused, threatened to fight. But when Jennifer sent them a preview of the evidence, the tone changed quickly. Carver knew he was beaten. Meanwhile, the story exploded in the media. News outlets around the world picked it up. Orphaned teenager solves billionaire's musical code. Inherits control of $8 billion foundation. It was the kind of story that seemed too perfect to be real. Maya did one interview with a local news station. She sat in the library, her library with Mr. Harrison beside her, and explained what the foundation would do. This isn't about me, she told the reporter. This is about all the kids who think they're alone because they're different, because they see things other people don't see, because they're too smart or too weird or too anything. We're going to create places where those kids can find each other, where being exceptional isn't something you have to hide. The interview went viral. Within days, Maya's email was flooded with messages. Kids from around the country, around the world, telling her their stories. Orphans, foster kids, kids in difficult situations who had nowhere to go. Kids who saw patterns in everything. Kids who loved music or math or coding or art. Kids who just wanted someone to understand. Maya read every single message. And she cried because she finally understood what Ashford had been trying to do. He hadn't been leaving his fortune to one person. He'd been leaving it to all of them. Every lonely genius who thought they were the only one. Vincent Carver settled 2 weeks later. $500 million paid to the Ashford Foundation. No criminal charges. No public scandal beyond what had already been reported. He got to keep his company, but everyone who mattered knew the truth. Maya didn't care about destroying him anymore. She had more important things to do. The foundation launched officially in January. Maya was still finishing high school, still living in the group home, but now she was also directing a massive organization. She worked with the board to identify the first 3 locations. Seattle, obviously. Then Chicago and Austin. Buildings that would be more than just group homes. They'd be innovation centers, places where kids could learn and create and find their people. Mr. Harrison left the library to become the full-time education director. Together, they designed programs that combined arts and sciences, that let kids explore their passions while getting the support they needed. By March, the first Seattle location opened. A renovated building near downtown with music studios, computer labs, art spaces, and comfortable bedrooms. 15 kids moved in the first week. Kids from foster care, kids who'd been bouncing around the system, kids who were brilliant and broken, and finally somewhere they belonged. Maya visited on opening day. She walked through the music studio and saw a girl about her age sitting at a piano, working through a complicated piece. The girl looked up and smiled. "Are you Maya?" she asked. "Yeah. I saw your interview. I applied to live here because you said something about seeing patterns everywhere. I thought I was the only one who did that." Maya smiled. "You're definitely not the only one." She spent the afternoon meeting the kids. A boy who was teaching himself quantum physics. A girl who wrote poetry in 3 languages. A kid who could solve a Rubik's Cube in 12 seconds but struggled to talk to people. All of them different. All of them exceptional. All of them finally somewhere they didn't have to hide. That night, Maya went back to the group home where she still lived. Her own room in the foundation building wouldn't be ready for another month. She lay in her small bed, listening to her roommate snore, and thought about how much had changed in 6 months. She thought about the night she'd found the code in the musical manuscript, how she'd almost convinced herself it was nothing, just her imagination seeing patterns that weren't there. She thought about Richard Ashford, alone in his mansion, spending 20 years creating a puzzle for someone who would understand. And she thought about all the kids who were sleeping in the foundation building right now, maybe for the first time in their lives feeling like they'd found home. Maya pulled out her phone and opened the photo of Ashford's final journal entry. "Don't make my mistakes. Don't let genius make you lonely. Use what I've left you to build connection, not walls." She'd done it. Not perfectly, maybe, but she'd done it. The code hadn't just unlocked a fortune. It had unlocked the possibility that being different was okay, that seeing the world in patterns and numbers and musical progressions wasn't something to hide, that somewhere out there were other people who understood. Maya had spent 5 years feeling alone. Now she was surrounded by kids just like her, and together they were going to change the world, one pattern at a time. She fell asleep smiling, the photo of Ashford's words still glowing softly on her phone screen, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money at all. It's proof that you're not alone.